Good morning, students. This is Mr. Gauthier, and I'm going to be reading to you our next series of notes that we're tackling titled Environmental Problems. This is part 1 of 2 for this chapter out of the textbook, the next unit being Environmental Solutions. Before we go on, please make sure that your name and the period is written somewhere on your paper. That way, if you leave them behind after class or lose them in the hallway, someone will hopefully track them down to you. So to begin, we really need to establish when all these problems first started happening, and really, we need to go back a ways. You're not to blame for it, really. Really, we should blame it on your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. Okay? Because back during the late 1700s into the 1800s is when the Industrial Revolution was happening. It really started over in Europe, but every aspect of life was influenced by the Industrial Revolution and us realizing the power and the abilities we had as mankind to produce things through the use of factories and not small town shops. Pollution, it all stemmed from the Industrial Revolution. So the definition of pollution is an important one. Pollution is the unwanted change in the environment, and it's caused by many different things. But the key words that you need to make sure you write down are unwanted change. Here in a little bit, we'll talk about certain types of pollution that you might not consider as pollution, but when you think about the definition of it being unwanted change to an environment, it makes a lot more sense. Some different types of pollution include waste pollution, gas pollution, noise pollution, and also radiation. You have nothing to write on this slide except for a number there towards the end, so just pay attention, because you're the problem. Even though I just said we can blame this on your grandparents, there's no way around it. Most pollutants in our environment are man-made. And then the most trash in the world, without a doubt, is American-made. That's probably no surprise to many of you. The average American throws away over 26 pounds of trash per week. And that's the average American. So obviously my little daughter probably doesn't crank out 26 pounds of trash, but there are some adults that probably throw away way more than 26 pounds. That's an average. So think about how many people live in your house. If you live mom, dad, maybe one brother or sister and yourself, that means you guys are cranking out over 100 pounds of trash per week, and our landfills are filling up quick. So one of the types of pollution is waste, and there are different types of waste out there. The first one sounds scary right off the bat. That's hazardous waste. And this is waste that can catch fire, wear through metal, explode, or even make people sick. So I'm going to pause this, and we're going to talk about this as a class so that you can fill in the blanks below this writing. But again, hazardous waste can catch on fire, wear through metal, explode, or make people sick. So think about that when we're getting some examples. I'm going to go ahead and pause it now. All right. The next type of waste that we're talking about are chemical waste. And chemicals are particularly harmful to our environment. They're illegal now, but there used to be these things called CFCs. And, oh man, I have a phone call. Hold on. Hello? Hey man, I'm right in the middle of recording a video for my notes today. It's alright. Class, Mr. Hartley has on his favorite sweatpants and slippers. Make sure you ask him about it today. Goodbye, Mr. Hartley. Gosh, he calls me every single morning. Weird. Where was I? CFCs and PCBs. These things used to be in any home product that's sprayed. And I'm not talking about like a squirt gun. I'm talking about like hairspray or aerosol deodorant. CFCs and PCBs are kind of what helped that stuff squirt out of the container, and we used them for many years. This was back in the 80s, and eventually we realized that these CFCs and PCBs are very damaging to the environment. We'll talk more about those in a few days, but they are perfect examples of chemical waste that we realize way too late that they're very damaging. The next one, as illustrated by Homer Simpson himself, radioactive waste. Radioactive waste are hazardous waste that obviously give off radiation. this radioactive waste can take up to millions of years to break down. So when we're talking about nuclear energy or anything that gives off radiation, this is the type of waste we're talking about. And because they're so hazardous, they kind of have a title of their own, which is why, Homer's talking about it right there. The next one you're probably familiar with, that is gas waste. Our atmosphere, and we've talked about this a little bit, our atmosphere acts kind of like a protective blanket that keeps we here on Earth perfectly warm. But we've realized that greenhouse gases are being released into the atmosphere, and they're causing our atmosphere to hold in more heat than normal. The result, like I said, that we've already talked about in the past, is the greenhouse effect and therefore global warming. The next one is really what I had in mind when I had you write the definition to pollution about it being unwanted change, because noise pollution is a very real form of pollution. Noise pollution is unwanted change to an environment. So if there's construction work going outside your house, or if you live near an airport or by the train tracks here in Pickerington, you experience noise pollution all the time because it's unwanted change, and it can definitely harm you. There's no way around it. Loud noises over time can damage your hearing that never comes back. So noise pollution is indeed a definite type of pollution. So let's talk about resources. When we talk about resources, we're shifting away from the environmental problems and really defining the ways that we can help or hurt them. Some of the resources we use can be used over and over again, like aluminum, the aluminum cans you buy. Or there are some resources that we have an endless supply of, like sun and wind. You already should know these from the energy unit we just finished, but those are called renewable resources. And there are more of them besides just aluminum and the sun and wind, but these are resources that can be used over and over again, or we have an unlimited supply of them that's not going to run out. The opposite of that are the non-renewable resources, and again, we've already gone over these very recently, but we're talking about coal and oil and petroleum and nuclear energy. Those are the non-renewable resources. Also in this unit in the book is the topic of exotic species, because exotic species also have to do with environmental problems. Exotic species, by definition, are species that make a home in a new area. And oftentimes they thrive because they're away from their natural predators. And it requires a little bit of story, so even though you have nothing to write, pay attention. The Asian carp is one of the most famous types of exotic species. As hopefully you can guess, the Asian carp are from Asia. And Asian carp are very big and they're very nasty. They're bottom feeders, so they live kind of at the bottom of a lake or whatever. And they're big and they eat a lot and they're very aggressive fish. Well, over in Asia, where Asian carp originated, they have some predators that keep them in check. The predators in a predator-prey relationship are what eat and kill them that keep their numbers from expanding too high. The problem is this. Somehow, Asian carp got into our Great Lakes, like the lakes right above us, like Lake Erie and Lake Michigan. And the problem is that Asian carp are the biggest, nastiest fish in the Great Lakes. So they have no natural predators. So the Asian carp, all of a sudden living in the Great Lakes, when you have no predators, you start to grow like crazy. So Asian carp are eating up a lot of the fish in the Great Lakes, and they're causing a lot of problems because nothing can kill them except for mankind, and we really have no reason to kill them because no one eats Asian carp, so they're just reproducing like crazy. There are other examples of exotic species. We'll talk about those in a few days too. So shifting a little bit away from that has to do with you and I, the human population. And one reason why all of these problems are occurring and getting worse is because of us. Now, I purposely left this slide with this 6 billion people for a reason. So yeah, you can go ahead and write 6 billion in your blank right there. But when I first made these notes many years ago, this was the information. We're currently at well over 6 billion people in the world. Check out this next chart. As of this morning, I Googled what is the population of Earth, and it kind of got cut off right there. 7.125 billion people. So this chart, this original chart, you can see here are the years at the bottom. When this chart was put together, it was the year 1999 into 2000, and Earth was at 5.8 billion people. When I made these slides, probably 6 or 7 years ago, is when I looked up, there was now 6 billion people. As of this morning, it is February 24th, 2016, there are 7.125 billion people living on Earth. And that number is showing no signs of slowing down. You can see back during like the year 1000 and then the 1300s and 1500s, there was less than 1 million people. Sorry, 1 billion people. And then all of a sudden, right around the 1900s, there was a giant spike, and we're growing exponentially. I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to ask you guys this question. Why? Why for so many years, from the year 1000 to, let's just go up to the 1800s, why was there only around 1 billion people in the entire world, but then all of a sudden, right around the 1900s, the number of people shot up like crazy? There's one very good answer. I'm going to pause it. Hopefully you can tell me it. All right. Finally, the last slide of bad news has to do with habitat destruction. An organism's habitat is where it lives. This term called biodiversity defines the number and variety of species in a habitat. Biodiversity is very important because it keeps everything running smoothly. Here in, let's just say, Pickerington, Ohio, the biodiversity would be all the different types of birds and squirrels and dogs and cats, whatever, that live in this area. So Pickerington's biodiversity would be very different than like the Amazon rainforest biodiversity. But naturally, as is the theme with these notes, when we humans are polluting and chopping down forests at alarming rates, we're ruining the habitats of both land and sea animals and plants, which is just, more bad stuff to pile onto your life. That's it. Hope you enjoyed these notes. Sorry again about Mr. Hartley interrupting us. That's just what he does.